All right. You know what it is. You know who it is. We are back. Give us a little bit of slack today. I am trying out a new podcast platform called Riverside, and it's a little bit different. There's a lot more buttons. Me and Jerry are trying to figure this out. So if
I
anything
also
does,
super close to the camera for some reason.
yeah, his is zoomed in. It didn't. It actually on the we just did like a test recording, and it actually zoomed out a little bit on yours. It wasn't like totally zoomed in. I think it's just because we're both on screen. Um,
Maybe.
but we are back. Welcome back to another episode. Hope you guys had a good week. I am feeling a little bit ill. Nose is stuffy.
Mm.
Been training hard, but a little bit stuffy in the week. But it's been a good week overall. A lot of progress. A lot of shit getting done. Today we are going to be talking about kind of a carryover from last week's episode into this week. We'll call it underrated, overrated, perfectly rated. Right? We're going to be talking about exercises, movements inside the gym that are overrated, underrated, and perfectly rated. So, inside of this episode, what we are going to be doing is we're going to be picking, me and Jerry both made a list of about like 3 to 5 movements, I would say, for overrated, underrated, and perfectly rated. We're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down. We're going to give our reasons why we believe them. And we are going to start from there. Is there anything you'd like to add to that before we start?
No, I'm excited because I saw again like a few things on our list that are in different places. So I'm excited to hear your explanation because I feel like everything I wrote has an asterisk
I
always.
do need to start this off with saying I can't get over this now that Jerry looks exactly like Omni Man.
No, dude, my jaw is non-existent. He's got a jawline.
Jerry
Is it?
looks like
It's the silver on the sides.
it's the
You know,
mustache. No, it's
the
the facial
mustache.
structure. Maybe the chin isn't as like big, but if you haven't watched
My
Invincible, you should
I got a
definitely go
rounded
watch
face.
Invincible. It's a cartoon that Jerry's been getting me to watch. If you haven't watched The Boys, it's the same people who made The Boys.
Yeah, it's the same. Like I don't know what comic strip. It's like a Marvel, DC, and then this universe, whatever they do.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
who it
So
is.
so it's an interesting show. So you should definitely watch it.
It's
But
on Prime.
yes, Amazon Prime. Underrated, overrated, perfectly rated. Where are we going to start with this?
Let's start off with I think underrated. Actually, let's go overrated first,
Okay.
into underrated, and then we can talk about perfectly rated ones.
All right. This is going to help me. I was having trouble with some perfectly rated exercises. I tried not to force myself to put five because I didn't want to like force some of these into baskets if I didn't think if I didn't truly think they were overrated or underrated or perfectly rated. But you said we're starting at underrated,
Let's start with uh, overrated.
overrated.
Go into
All right.
underrated because it's more of a positive, and then we'll
All
go
right.
perfectly rated.
Do you want to start? You want me to start?
I can start.
We can start. We had one the same. We could start with
Yeah.
why we agree that one's the same.
You want to say it on the count of three?
Three, two, one. Back
Back
squat.
squat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Highly
So,
overrated movement.
our first one. This is one of the ones what I wanted to do is I didn't want to see your list. We should have just done that.
Yeah, I was gonna write it separately.
But I put it in there as my fault.
Yeah.
But anyways, so the back squat. I think I'll let Jerry kind of jump in and out of this too. But I've in the last couple years I was heavy on the back squat when I first started training, and I think the back squat's one of those movements that is great for a purpose, right? And is great if you are a power lifter and if you're someone who's trying to get better at the squat, right? And when we talk about bilateral movements for the leg, which means we have both feet on the ground that are producing force, the back squat's going to be one of those movements that obviously is I would say the king of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a couple things I don't like about the back squat that I don't, and the reason why I think one it's overrated is because it's obviously a fixed position, and what I see oftentimes is that people get stuck with the back squat as the main like they almost try to fit people into the back squat instead of fitting people into just the squatting pattern. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that it's forced in a lot of situations.
Yeah, and I,
And
and I
instead
think
of
with
like trying to master the movements made for this person, that whether it's a coach or just a gym goer, they just try to make themselves fit with the back squat
yeah, and
always.
I think when you look at the the back squat in general, right? When you look at the overall, like overarching view of the back squat, you know, you have a bar on your back. There's a lot of things outside of the actual squat that get involved, right? And it is very hard to completely load the squat, and this is why this is why I'm interested to hear why you think one of the movements is overrated. But there aren't a lot of ways to fully maximally load the legs, because oftentimes with those patterns, there's things that get in the way, right? Like with a back squat, there's thoracic spine strength, there's core strength, there's shoulder mobility. All this kind of gets in the way. And with the back squat, oftentimes, you know, it's not fixed position, but because of the bar, there's not a lot of room for error to get full strength in the squat, right? Once you're developed, once you're fully understanding and you have experience in the back squat, then I think it becomes more of a perfectly rated movement. But I think that overall for most people, 95% of the population, back squatting in general. Now, when I say back squatting, I think we're both in agreement here. It's when a bar is on our back, right?
Yeah.
Not the squat pattern. I don't want people to get confused and think that. But like when a barbell is on our back loaded and we're going down to a squat. Now, I think the back squat in general, like it can be loaded, right? There could be a lot of weight added on top of it. But I think there's a lot of things that are more efficient and more effective when it comes to the squat pattern as a whole.
Yeah, I think with the back squat, the reason that I listed it as overrated is because, again, everyone tries to force themselves to be able to back squat, even if they can't. And things that might stop you from back squatting might be hip mobility, ankle mobility, core stability and strength. And people will try to do everything they can to do a back squat in their programming before fixing those things. So instead of working on their mobility, instead of working on their core positioning and strength, if they have terrible squat form and the bar path isn't that straight up and down and it's kind of moving back and forth, they will continue to load that movement before mastering all the other things, which causes them to either get hurt or not see the progress that they want to see. So I feel like because people try to force the back squat into the programming, they're not seeing results that they could see if they were to just do something like a single leg movement or like even like a leg press, something like that, which is, we could talk about that one later too, but I feel like it's forced. You know?
Yeah, I think with the squat pattern in general, I think, like I said, it's a very high skill movement that a lot of people don't consider high skill because they just kind of think, bar on back equals squat, right?
Yeah.
But I think when we actually talk about the skill of a back squat and you actually break down, and this is the important thing, and I think this is what is so interesting about fitness in general, is like when we just look at movements, I think a lot of times people just take for granted the amount of skill it takes to go through certain patterns, right? And I think the back squat is one of the highest, skill movements we could do in the basic forms, when we're just specifically talking about, bodybuilding, powerlifting, like basic lifting, outside of like Olympic lifting or outside of anything like that.
It's part of the big three.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, I think back squat number one. I think we can both agree with that. Do you want to say your number two, or do you want me to say?
Let me see. Oh yeah, I'll do this one quick because it's not a huge explanation.
Okay.
So it's one of my biggest pet peeves too, is because people will do this one all the time. So lean out lateral raises. So if you don't know what I mean, if you're working your right arm for a lateral raise and you're leaning to the right,
okay,
people will do their lateral raises that way. You're much better off either doing it standing, straight up and down, or lean in lateral raises where you can bring your arm slightly in front, because you have less range of motion where your deltoid's actually working during a lean out lateral raise. As soon as you get below like 45 degrees, most of the weight is just being pulled straight down because you're leaning out. Mm-hmm. If you really want to work the deltoid, that lateral head, lean in. This way your arm can come in front of you and get an extra stretch on the deltoid head, and you'll be working it through a larger range of motion, but also you'll have more tension during that stretch position, which elicits a better hypertrophy response.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. I can get down with that. I think that, like, overall, when we look at, the delt movements, I think that a lot of that stuff is overrated in general, because I think a lot of it is accessory work, and I think it's very dependent on, like, what you need, and I think the lateral raise specifically is something that's very muscle dependent, right? Like, I think it comes from the bodybuilding field. It comes from that, background where it's like I'm isolating the delt head, where most of the time for most people, obviously it helps with health of the shoulder, but I do think a lot of that stuff is a little bit like overrated in regards to the importance, because
Yeah.
we can train a lot of that stuff through, capacity through like the bench and overhead press and things like that, and then we can add in, accessory shoulder movements like swimmers and YCWs and delt, like rear delt flies, that type of thing, to work on the rest of the shoulder, and really the lateral raises and things like that are if you want like extra definition, or if you feel you need extra help on the delts on your shoulders, right?
And I think that's one of the things that most people who have been in the gym have done lateral raises of some sort, because it's
Yeah,
one of those movements that everybody does.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, my number two, I will go with deadlift, straight bar deadlift. Now,
Ooh.
yeah, so I think this is overrated because it's kind of the same idea with the back squat, right? I think if we're talking about the hinge pattern in general, there are a lot better ways to train, right? I think the deadlift is very good for getting very strong, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with the deadlift inherently. I think that if we're talking about bang for our buck, I think that the deadlift can get you pretty far, right? But I think also with that bang for your buck, there's a lot of injury risk, and there's a lot of things that go wrong, especially very early, because the deadlift is it's a pattern that allows people to lift heavier loads quicker, that I think a lot of people forget, and they just go for it. And this is where, most people that get hurt are going to hurt themselves early on with a deadlift type pattern, right? We all remember it. We all have seen it. We've all done it probably if we've been lifting long enough or hard enough, where we have the deadlift, we feel the back pain, and we're like, all right, I'm never doing that
You're
again.
like,
And you
oh
do it again,
shit.
and you're like, no, really, I'm never doing that again.
It's
Then you
like
do it
people
again,
drinking, dude.
and you're just like, fuck it, I just do it all the time anyway, so I'm just going to keep doing it. And then it just kind of goes from there, right? But I think the deadlift is overrated for a couple reasons. One, I think that if we're actually looking to train like that, the aspect of the deadlift, I think that there's a lot better ways we could do it in an efficient manner. And I also think that like a trap bar deadlift is a better option, right? And I think when we talk about this, if we can find a more efficient option that keeps us safer, that automatically would make like that one overrated, right? Because
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
kind of hard, because you might see some people, and I think this is a thing. I think a lot of people would come out and probably scold me or be like, oh well, the deadlift is it's a primary pattern, just like you said. It's a movement that gets you really strong, blah blah blah, and like whatever. You can't be a bitch when you deadlift, that type of thing. Where I think it's like, okay, like I understand what you're saying, but I also see that there's a lot of risk. There's a lot. There's efficiency with high risk, and I don't think that's the type of pattern that, in my eyes, that pattern to me would be overrated, and especially the straight bar version of the deadlift. We're talking about a trap bar deadlift. I would almost put that on the underrated side of things, because I don't think it's utilized enough. I think sometimes in the athletic space, it's utilized more, where you talk about like trap bar deadlifts with jumps, or that type of thing. But I think in general population, the trap bar is probably underrated overall. And I think the deadlift just puts us in a position where, the main thing is with the trap or the straight bar, it's a bar that we have to move our body around, right? And this is something that I would love to have another conversation on, and why I think like, because when we talk about lifting, right? And this is another thing with like Olympic lifting. A lot of people talk about Olympic lifting, and they talk about it's hard to teach and blah blah blah, and it's this and that, or it's not, it doesn't teach speed, it doesn't teach power. Like it might be the case, right? But I think one of the biggest things that it teaches overall is that we have to move our body around stuff, right? And with the straight bar deadlift, it puts us in a position where we're kind of not in the strongest position as if we were in a trap bar deadlift, and that's why you'll see individuals like skill wise that can't lift say 225 on a straight bar, but then they can do like 275 on a trap bar, right? Especially for taller individuals who are like over 6 feet and who have longer limbs. Like this is where the trap bar starts to work, because the levers just don't make sense at certain points for a straight bar deadlift to be efficient in regards to lifting maximal load while staying safe.
I would agree, and so as coming from somebody, deadlift is probably one of my favorite movements to do in the gym. I've always been really good at it, and it's one of those lifts that always feels
I love
really
it, but I
good.
always like I always I don't know what it is. I have like, and maybe it's just a mental thing, but like I do like it, But I just find every time I get like over 315, 345, that type of area, I just never feel fucking good. And I'm just like, so I haven't done over that much in a long time.
Yeah, I would just say the main reason why I would say that it would be overrated is because
By
it's
the way,
not
they got
necessary
me.
to do.
They
What's
got
that?
me.
Nice. Good old like $20 bottle of
Marketing.
water right there.
The marketing got me.
Yeah, it's that blue bottle that gets you with the gold writing. The deadlift, the main argument people will say is like it teaches you how to like it's the most basic lift that teaches you how to lift odd objects.
Hmm.
And it's like an 80-year-old woman who's picking up a laundry basket could really use a deadlift. It's like, yeah, sure, but why are you going so heavy?
Yeah.
How much laundry is she doing that you need to load it up with hundreds of pounds? So that's
She's doing
like
the whole
the
town.
main argument is people are like, well, it's really important to do that. Yeah, I get it, but most people don't need to load it up that heavy. So
Yeah.
I would
So,
agree in that case.
cool. All right. Next one.
Oh, dude, crunches. Crunches are
Crunches?
so fucking overrated, dude. Only because
Oh,
so aesthetically, like if you're doing like loaded like I'm talking about classic crunches.
yeah.
People will just go through them, right? And they'll be like, "Oh, I feel that burn." Just because you're feeling a burn doesn't necessarily mean you're getting something in the
Yeah.
abs. In fact, this was one of those things where like I'm very scientific with a lot of things, but I'm not too scientific to the point where I'll like be like, "Oh, well, it's not showing up on paper." But this is one of those things. We put electrodes on our abdominal muscles during a lab once in biomechanics, and we were doing a
Hmm.
bunch of different movements to see which ones activated the abs the most. Crunches had minimal fucking effect. It's really good for hip flexors, and that's a big like PowerPoint, a big piece of power in the crunch. But as far as abdominal work, like I definitely
Yeah, I
think they're
agree. I
overrated.
agree, I guess. I agree.
Yeah,
I feel like as I'm talking, having these conversations, I could add so many to the underrated list. But
yeah,
yeah, I think I agree. I think like crunches and I think the idea of crunching is important, but I think the way that the crunch is taught and executed by most people is completely overrated. And I see your point.
that's yeah, exactly. So there's like a little caveat to each little point that I make. It's because of one specific thing or multiple that go with
No,
it.
but I think so far, I think the back squat and the deadlift and what was the other one you said?
Lean out lateral raises.
Yeah, I think those are pretty overrated to be honest.
Oh
Like
yeah.
if we're being completely honest. All right, next we got running. I put running on the overrated list. I've been running a fuck ton. Obviously, I just ran a half marathon. I think running is overrated for a couple reasons. I think that I've started to see a couple things online where people are like, uh, they're kind of talking about there's like this big endurance shift, and I think a lot of people are shifting towards endurance. And I don't think I think running probably for me slightly tips into overrated, but is probably perfectly rated. But I think running for a lot of reasons is overrated because it again, like it's one of those things where people don't understand how much skill it actually takes to be able to run efficiently and properly at long distances, right? I think that running, if again, you're good at it and you have kind of a fitness level and you're able to build up, is great, right? But I think what happens is a lot of people don't have the capacity, they don't have the understanding, and they look at running as like this, oh, I'm just going to run and I'm just going to lose weight. And that's can be the case, right? But I've seen these tweets from people recently where they're kind of like, oh, for people who say that weightlift or running doesn't help with losing weight, they're just not running enough. And it's like I get it, like I understand, but at what point is enough, right? And I think with some people, like obviously running can be very time consuming, right? And I think that if you're not good at it, it can be very demanding on your body. Like even for me, you know, I would consider I train regularly, right? I train every day, sometimes most of the time twice a day in some capacity, whether it be like lifting and jujitsu or lifting and running. And after the half marathon, I was shot. Like I was so tired, right? And I think that when we talk about running, I think that it's overrated for the simple fact that it's made to seem so easy and that it's like this end all fix all type thing for people. And we really undersell how important it is or how highly skilled it is and like how much actually goes into being a good runner. But I think running, you know, can help an individual, right? Because even one of the things I have on my underrated list is a form of running. But I think long distance running is slightly overrated because it's looked at as like this weight loss thing. You just do it, and you're not pushing hard enough, and you're not, you know, like it's just all in your mind, blah blah blah. Some people just don't have good form, right? Or they're just not able to withstand that amount of pressure, and that's it. And it's not to say you can't learn it, but if you're gonna go and look at, okay, I want to lose weight, and you're telling me like how can I do that? I'm not putting running on your list as like a general population client. I'm not going there and being like, yeah, just go start running 10 miles, right? It's just like, cool. That would be like an easy blanket. Just be like, yeah, just go start moving 10 miles. That'd be like, okay, go work out for 3 hours a day. And of course you're going to lose weight. It's an easy answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot that goes into running that just people forget. And they're just like, oh, well, just go run and it'll fix your problems. It's like, okay, cool. But like, what if you only have an hour in your day, right? Like, running isn't going to be the most efficient thing and long-term thing to help someone lose weight and maintain weight and build muscle mass and build bone density. Like, it's just not the case, right? So because of all those things, running, although I do it all the time now, is boom, overrated.
All right.
Anything to add?
I will add something later.
Okay.
Later, yeah. Next on my list, I got barbell hip lifts. It's a hot
Okay.
take. But
Okay.
barbell hip lifts, I believe, are overrated.
Okay.
They're great. Don't get me wrong. You can get a lot out of it, but a lot of fitness, especially on the female side of things, it's all glute growth, and people love their hip lifts, and they do help the glutes. But a lot of glute growth will come from other movements as well, and people just for some reason give credit to the hip lift as the main thing.
Box step-ups are better.
Yeah. So being in a very lengthened position, also single leg stability for glute growth and strength is huge. Being that you're on, it's a bilateral movement, makes it a little less. It's still good for the glutes, but I think it is just in the point of overrated instead of perfectly rated, just because of all the talk it gets and how much love it gets. But on the same note,
I mean, but let's
if
just
you
be
were to do,
honest.
like a
too, like,
single
setting up
leg
for
version, I'd say that's perfectly
setting
rated
up for
or
a
under.
fucking glute bridge is awful. I hate getting under a bar and having like a barbell on my hip and then having to lift myself up on my chest or my back and then squeeze it's the worst. I would just
The setup, it's exhausting. There's a lot into it that like makes it not so perfect to me.
yeah.
And that's another thing is the comfort level. Like so many people don't want to have a bar on themselves with that heavy of weight, and the glutes can move some weight. Now they have machines and stuff like the padded glute bridge or like hip thrust machines that most gyms have, or like almost
Yeah.
like pendulum ones with the weights that you stack on the side. But same idea, just overrated to me. Just overrated.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
My last one for overrated is bent over barbell rows.
Whew.
So
I would actually agree. I want to hear what you're saying.
so the reason I say bent over barbell rows is kind of the same. Like if we're looking at efficiency of movement, right, and like choosing the best possible movement we can do, putting yourself in a bent over position with a heavy barbell out in front of you and then pulling that bar to your body is just not the best way to do it, right? And I think that the barbell bent over row, it kind of falls in that same category as the deadlift. And the reason I say that is because when we look at like training an area, I think when we talk about efficiency and we try to like break down what is truly best, I think the barbell bent over row kind of puts us in a disadvantaged position where we're actually not going to be able to lift the most amount of weight that we can. I think it's again like a full body movement, and I think one of the things we have to understand is when we talk about full body movements, something gives way, right? We have to sacrifice something to get full body, or for example, when we do like a bench press with our feet up in the air, like I see that one a lot at the gym lately. I don't know why, but it's like you're just not going to be able to maximally lift with your chest, right? So it's like, yes, you might be working multiple muscles in your body, but what is the goal? And this is why intention is so important inside exercise selection. Because if your goal is to maximally load the chest and you want to get your chest as big or as strong as possible, having your legs in the air is just not the best way to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know it might seem like, oh, I'm working multiple muscles in my body and it's full body, blah, blah, blah. And I think that like with the bent over barbell row, it's kind of this thing that's a very hard position to hold. For most people, they don't have the shoulder blade retraction to keep that position. So when they row, there's a lot of this like internal rotated position on the shoulder. and also the range of motion on the bar isn't perfect, and it can lead us into some really like ugly positions while holding the bar. That basically like, I mean, realistically, the barbell row, like if you're doing it right, is like the worst position of the deadlift, and you're supporting like a massive amount of weight there, and then rowing it into like your stomach, and you'll see people, rowing it into their chest, and it's just like that whole movement in general to me is just not great, and that's why I would say it'd be overrated.
Yeah, I'd agree with the mechanical disadvantage. Obviously, the lower back takes a lot of that load that it has to hold, and then people end up cheating anyway, using their legs too much because they're getting tired in their lower back. So it's like, I agree.
Yeah,
That's a great explanation. Very good.
beautiful. Any more on
Um,
your overrated? That was my last one. So
there's one more on my overrated, and
cool.
it is high intensity interval training all the time.
All the time. Okay. All
People
right.
will
Yeah.
do high. So the reason I wrote all the time is because obviously it's very useful and it's great for you. But when people do only high intensity interval training every single day or every single time they go in the gym, you might be in and out, but you could use your time so much more wisely than just going 90% every day. It's the same model that a lot of these group fitness gyms take. They
Yep.
take pride in these really hard workouts. They're randomized every time you come in, and there's no progressive overload. There's no progression in movements. It's just, here's this thing, we're going to do this, and then before taking a breath, we're going to go do this, and then we're going to slap some grandparents, and then we're going to go over here and do this, and it's like a million different things, and it's too much. It's too
Well, I
much.
think like hit in general is supposed to be, it's a type of exercise that's supposed to produce or improve performance in a specific setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because it feels so hard, people feel like I'm getting more done, and they feel
Mm-hmm.
like if I feel like I'm getting more done, then I must be getting more done. If I feel tired, I must be burning more calories, and that's the pitfall of hit training. And I think that you hit that at the square on the head.
Yeah, I love it.
Beautiful.
Want
So
to move
now
into
we're gonna
underrated?
go underrated.
Underrated. Then we'll
I got
finish with
like
perfect.
seven. I got like seven underrated
You got
movements.
7. I got 5.
All right, I'm gonna start with number one, leg press. Leg press is an underrated movement. I'm gonna tell you why. It's the only movement outside of a belt squat that you can maximally load the lower body for absolute strength, right? When we talk about absolute strength, we talk about the most amount of weight that you can lift at a single, you know, point, right? And I think with the leg press, the problem that a lot of people do, and again they sacrifice, is they don't go through the full range of motion, right? Like they don't give themselves that ability to fully lengthen the squat position. Now, why it's so important, right? And this is another reason why this back squat is overrated, is because there's so much external stability needed in that movement that we're not going to be able to maximally load the legs. We can get ourselves tired. We can make sure that we're feeling that through that movement, and it's very good to do the back squat. But if we're talking about or if we're talking about underrated movements and things that I think get a lot of flack that are really good, is pairing the leg press with the back squat, right? And that way we work on that skill component of like the back squat or a goblet squat, but even both of those, right? If we're goblet squatting, for example, realistically, the biggest thing that's going to get tired first is how much weight can we actually hold in this position, right? For the leg press, it's just going to be, what's the range of motion, right? But with the leg press, the beautiful thing with that is that obviously you can see why people take advantage of it, and they do like these little quarter squats, and they have like 12 plates on the squat machine. The way I look at it and the way I use it is that I still go through as big of a range of motion as possible as I can on the squat with more weight, because I have the pad behind me, I have the handles, so my whole body is externally stabilized, right? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the back squat it has a lot of internal stability that you need, right? I might have missaid that. But the leg press has a lot of external stability with the seat, the headrest, the handles, and everything that could possibly get in the way is taken out, and it's just pure legs, right? And I think that's one of the most important things for people early on who want to get stronger, is to use these types of machines like the leg press to fully maximize and fully express strength in the most efficient way possible. That's why leg press is underrated.
I love it. It's a really good explanation. I like your reasoning for obviously external stability, but
Yes,
also range of motion is huge on the leg press.
that's where people fuck
And
up.
yeah, people do fuck up with range of motion. Um, My first one, a little hot take again. Sumo deadlifts, dude. I'm gonna get some shit for this. And I know I will. I know I will. It's an underrated movement because that shit helped my hip so much. When I was going through shit, I switched to sumos for a little bit, strengthened the glutes, and I changed the positioning of my upper body, and it felt great. But also, that's one of those ones that you think about the hardest point of a conventional deadlift is that hinged over position. This is another way where you can challenge the legs a little bit more and get a little more emphasis on like that vertical torso position while challenging the legs. And in that externally rotated position, it does help the glutes. I'm going to say that. People fucking hate it. People
I can't
hate
agree
it.
with you on this.
You don't have to agree.
I look at the sumo deadlift as like it's a sport movement. Like I don't look at it as something like an everyday person should be doing. But like that's just because like I look at it as like if you're actually doing like a real sumo deadlift, it's just a shorter way to move weight from point A to point B, right? But I think that the sumo deadlift in general really like, it's not. I'd rather do a trap bar.
I get that too, but also like having your foot position as wide as it is also gets the adductors fired up a little bit. I gotta say it just hits the legs and you fucking Saratoga over there.
No. I'm starting to lose my throat. I think.
Oh, that's not
just
good.
a little bit
Have
sore.
to get one of those things. But yeah, so the sumo deadlift mainly because of the positioning of the torso, positioning of the legs, and because it gets so much shit online. I'm gonna say it's underrated because people will be like, "Oh, it doesn't count. It's sumo." Be like, "Cool, you couldn't lift that sumo, so go ahead and try." Like, so I'm just giving it love because it gets so much hate.
I can't agree with you on this. I gotta give it hate.
You can give it hate all you want.
You know what bro science says? Pull sumo. I'm not gonna say it on here.
I know exactly what you said. Yeah.
All right. My next one is the dumbbell pullover. So I think that the dumbbell pullover is severely underrated because I don't think there's a lot of ways to train the serratus, right? And I think when we talk about the serratus is one of the most important muscles on the body that we have in regards to controlling shoulder function. And I think with the serratus, basically what happens with the serratus is the serratus stabilizes the scapula, and then the scapula allows the shoulder to move throughout the body, right? So what happens a lot of times is people don't even know what the serratus is because it's essentially a very thin muscle that kind of overlays the rib cage. And the best ways to train that I found or I've learned were the kettlebell windmill and the dumbbell pullover, and then there's obviously like drills and whatnot, but like to actually load it and train it like progressively is a dumbbell pullover and either a pullover machine, the cable pullover, and the windmill. But I think the dumbbell pullover is severely underrated because, like I said, this is one of the few efficient ways that we can actually fully load the serratus and progressively train it. And I've been using it consistently over the years, and I just feel like that with proper shoulder mobility is just like bulletproof shoulders. I've never had problems with my shoulders. I've never had, I don't have like 100% mobility with my shoulders, but I have really good mobility with my shoulders as far as I can tell. And I think part of the reason is like dumbbell pullovers and being able to load the scapula and like progressively load it, right? And I kind of like I would bunch this together with the dumbbell pullover, the cable pullover, and then like the kettlebell windmill as well.
I would argue that dumbbell pullovers are perfectly rated.
Ooh.
Because I think they get just enough love. I don't think they're anything like crazy special.
Yeah.
Yes, you get the benefit of working the serratus and like you said, there's other movements you could do. Like
I don't feel like I see enough people. One, I don't feel like I see people doing them enough, and I don't feel like I see people do it because they say it's for their chest. Like they're like, "Oh, I'm doing it for my chest."
I hate when people say that.
Yeah, and it's like that's why I would say it's underrated because I think people do it, but they don't do it I don't think they do it enough, and when they do, I don't think they do it for the right reasons. Or at least
they misunderstand the use of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can understand why you would say it's underrated for that reason too.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Beautiful.
Number 2 for me is carries of all kinds. Very underrated. Not enough people do carries. We've talked about it a lot, but the bottleneck of most movements, especially pulling in general, is going to be the forearm strength. But you don't only just get forearm strength with carries. You get a lot of core anti-flexion extension, lateral flexion extension, anti-rotation if you're doing like a half rack or a dumbbell front rack in a single arm. There are so many benefits, especially even for your mid back with those front rack carries. There's a ton that you can get out of them. And yeah, they may not be the most fancy. They may be boring to some people because nobody really wants to walk with weight or just hold it. But the benefits are so, so great for pretty much everybody. And I think that more people need to carry at least 2 to 3 times a week, minimum. Minimum.
I think I agree with this 100%. I just don't think a lot of gyms are set up for it because I think like
Yeah.
on top of like normal dumbbell kettlebell type carries, like yokes, D balls, heavy med balls, like those are some of my favorite things to do inside the gym. Like when I was in Florida, he had strongman equipment at Phil's gym that I was working at. And I had started getting into the strongman stuff with like, obviously we had Atlas stones. We would do like a strongman Saturday. So every Saturday we would just come in and we would just do a strongman workout. It would be like, like a circuit. It would be whatever, like log presses. We would do, med ball carries. We would do heavy sled pushes. And I think one of the best things that I found from that was just the carries in general. They helped my body so much. They allowed me to strengthen my core in like these weird carry positions. Then we had the obviously the grip capacity that would help with the carries, but then we also had like the overhead with the stones. We had the kegs there, like we had everything. So it was like all those carries helped everything out so much. But I think a lot of gyms, obviously that stuff's very dangerous, and I don't think they're set up for it. And I think a lot of places in general, like you go to heavy or you go to like a hotel gym or you go to something like that, you're not getting dumbbells over 50, and a lot of times it's time you have to do as opposed to like load, and I think a lot of times people need load, not more time. So, but I would definitely say carries are severely underrated still.
Yeah, I feel like the bottleneck of most movements is the forearm strength, but the bottleneck of doing carries is definitely your gym space.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
All right, number 3 for me, sprinting. I said this earlier. So I think sprinting is so severely underrated, and I'm gonna kind of explain this as just moving fast, right? Because I don't want people to think they should just go out tomorrow and sprint as fast as they can, right? Because you're gonna get hurt. But I think sprinting is so underrated because it's such a important movement for us. And I think a lot of people, as we age, kind of forget about those types of patterns where we're moving explosively and just with intent, right? I would call sprinting like running fast with intent, as fast as you can for a short distance. And I think that's such like, I think it's just hard because again, like I think a lot of this stuff is just seen as like athletic training. And I think we're starting, like we kind of went through a phase where we were just getting a lot of like, frat boys on Instagram being like, train like an athlete, and they're just doing a bunch of random stuff.
yep.
But now we're starting to get to an understanding where it's like, yeah, like normal people should be doing sprinting and med ball throws and, plyometrics and things like that in a small capacity. But I still think sprinting is underrated in like the general public in regards to fitness. And I think so many more people need to be doing it. Like I said, it's as simple as just running fast with intent. That's all, right? As fast as you can, with intent to move as fast as you can, and that can really be defined as sprinting, and I think more of us need to be doing it, so I think it's underrated.
I would agree. I think that it's one of the things that helps people maintain power too, because being able to quickly move your legs like that is huge,
Yeah.
and people lose power very fast, especially as you age.
Yeah.
And I've been a big proponent of the people who say like, never stop playing, that whole idea. Sprinting falls into that umbrella. It keeps you youthful. And it's like I said, it's really good for muscle development too. Like if
Yeah.
you want good glutes, sprinting will get you good glutes too.
100%.
So
100%.
That brings me to number 3, and I got dips.
Dips. Ooh. Yeah.
Dips.
Dips are tricky. Dips are tricky, but go ahead.
Yeah, so severely underrated. However,
I agree.
they are also severely, what's the word? Misperformed? Is that a word?
Just I
Performed
think like
incorrectly?
yeah, well, I think it's people again. It's one of those things where it falls under like a skill component, where it's like
it has a very high skill component. And the reason that I think that it's underrated is I think of one of the things that this is one of the reasons it's underrated. one of the movements that every single person I've ever worked with says, they say, I've never been able to, or I used to be able to, and can't anymore do a pull-up. The amount of scapular depression work on your
Pull-up or dip, you
shoulders.
mean? You said pull-up. Did you mean pull-up or did you mean dip?
Pull-up.
Okay.
So if you are struggling with pull-ups and you
I
start
see.
practicing dips and you practice that scapular depression that's required to hold your shoulders in a good position during a dip, you will in turn strengthen that scapular depression on the pull for a pull-up. It isn't the most, what's the word? It seems counterintuitive because it's a different movement. But
Well, I
it's
think if
kind
you
of
do the
using
dip
this.
correctly too, and
Yes.
like the way you're explaining it, like this is another thing is like it's important to do it correctly. Like a lot of people will sit in this dip position where they're kind of just like in the
Hmm.
middle. Like you
Yeah.
want to get through that full range of motion and get that full protraction of the shoulder, and then at the bottom you want to get that full retraction. Like that's
Hmm.
something that a lot of people miss.
Yeah. And with that too, it sounds like counterintuitive to like do a push in order to pull better, but it's kind of the same idea that like sometimes like a pal-off press. If you train your core to be resistant to movement, it can end up developing more movement in that range of motion too. And I've noticed that when I throw dips into somebody's program when they're struggling with pull-ups, they end up getting their pull-ups quicker.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with
And
that.
it's just really good for shoulder health.
100%.
Yeah.
I've been doing dips a lot more, and I felt amazing, like
Yeah.
in general. So,
Dips are great.
another one for me, sled push.
Dude, I almost put that down. I almost put
Yeah,
it down.
I think sled pushes again like is another like athletic field type thing.
Hmm.
But for me, like I'd rather see someone go through a sled push than a back squat. Like I think that's going to get them so much more in the lower body in regards to endurance, strength, output. That I think that the sled push, because of the position, again, it's so easy to load. And it's so easy to have to move a ton of weight, and you get the drive of the leg, and you can work on extension, you can work on flexion, you can kind of work on that marching and gait cycle. That was
Hmm.
one of my favorite things I'd work on with all athletes because realistically, with like fighters, you don't want to trash their legs, right? And a lot of the times in leg movements, that eccentric movement in a squat for someone like, like an Ian or someone like Amanda who has like really long legs, like it's not good for them to go through that full eccentric motion of the squat with heavy load. And the squat or the and you still want to be able to challenge their central nervous system. And a sled push is one of the easiest loadable ways and easiest expressible ways of high CNS movement that they can express full strength and like force of the lower body without really getting that like eccentric muscle damage and stimulus.
Agreed. Having that eccentric obviously does trash the legs more, and like you said, it's a really good way to load the legs without making them feel too sore. And
Yeah,
that biggest thing, I think, triple extension, being able to like get it through the hip, the knee, and the ankle too, like just
yeah,
power right through. That's huge for power development, but also health of the lower legs too.
100%.
I threw a bro one on here for
Bro,
underrated. My number 4 is a bro lift, and it's one of my favorites, Zottoman curls.
okay, okay,
Zottoman curls are actually super good for the biceps
I can
and
get that.
forearms. So the reason why I put this on here is because people typically do like the incline curls, the hammer curls, alternating curls. People throw in 21s for shits and giggles when they feel like not doing anything good for themselves. They do a lot of different movements for the biceps, but the one that is always slept on is his Ottoman curl. Being able to, because if you think about like what's something that creates the biggest hypertrophic response,
Hmm.
it's the stretch stimulus.
Yeah,
As you turn your pinky to the sky, you get that extra contraction of the bicep. So if you're bringing it down and you're only going neutral, or you're bringing it with palms forward, that supinated position, you're still in a semi-contracted position, but when you turn into a pronated position, that bicep tendon lengthens a little bit more, and you get a big stretch stimulus at the bottom. On top of that, you get your brachioradialis working, which is that beer drinking muscle. If you were to hold a pitcher, it kind of like shows up right there next to the bicep. But along with the forearm benefits, the bicep just gets super stretched, and that's just one of my favorite movements, and it always gets a really big pump, and it doesn't get enough love. So I just wanted to throw a bro workout in there. bro
Beautiful. I
exercise.
like that. I like
Yeah.
that. I'm gonna bring it back to one now, kind of one that I was talking about in the overrated, but chest supported rows in general.
Mm-hmm.
Anything where our chest is supported, this like seal rows, chest supported rows, chest supported
Chest
seated
supported.
rows, supported, widowy, widowy,
Widowy,
widowy,
find yourself a bench
chest
and a
supported.
fedora. Waities.
Waities, please.
Please, please.
So, so chest supported rows. Anything where our chest is supported and it's kind of taking a lot of that load of supporting the weight out in front of us. So essentially, think of like a bent over row, like a seal row, right? Or a bent over row, but switching that out for a seal row where our whole body is on a bench and we're
Mm-hmm.
pulling that weight that way, right? That takes all the unnecessary stress off the body and allows us to just isolate on the row and just focus on that nice, big, full range of motion of the row. And that is like, one, it works on obviously taking all that stress away. Two, with that chest supported position, it allows us to work on full protraction of the shoulder and then full retraction of the shoulder because we have that object in front of us where we don't have to like stop ourselves, right? We don't have to be like, okay, I can't go this low because it's going to go into my back and then all this other stuff. It's just the support's here, and as I reach, my shoulder gets this nice big stretch, and I can work on this nice big full range of motion of the shoulder, which helps us fully develop the lat, and then obviously helps us with full range of motion of the scapula.
Beautiful. I like it. My
Beautiful.
only issue with like barbell supported rows is usually the barbell will hit the bench,
Oh, we have at my gym we have like one that's like boom,
like a U
boom.
bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are. I was gonna say that.
Usually you
the
use
barbells
dumbbells.
you have
I
one of
wouldn't
those
use a normal dumbbell for that or a barbell. I'd probably use if you have a Swiss bar or dumbbells on a seal row or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Same
Yeah.
page. I love it as always. Usually.
Yes.
Usually. And by usually, that brings me to my number 5. Long runs are underrated. Not for the
Okay.
reasons that you believe they're overrated, though. So this is
Okay.
one of those asterisk ones. There has been, in the past, like, gosh, dude, probably like 15 years, V-Shred and a bunch of other people are saying, long runs are killing your gains, and they're doing
Oh, okay.
this, and they're preventing you from doing that. And they've become an idea of like, oh, bro, I'm going to go catabolic if I start doing long runs. I can't do that, and people skip out on it. However, obviously there are ways to be more efficient with weight loss than just long runs all the time. This isn't like an everyday thing, like go on long runs multiple times a week, maybe like a couple times a week. And the reason why is strictly for the cardiovascular benefit that most
Yeah.
people are lacking from their regular training routine. So if I had to say the one reason that they're underrated is, or two reasons would be because of the misconception that you're going to go catabolic and lose all of your muscle mass if you start running, which isn't just not true. We found that to be untrue based on a lot of research, and also like how many hybrid athletes have come out in the past like 10 years who are just shredded but also have good muscle mass, and then the obvious cardiovascular response that you get from training, and it's just really good for longevity. When you see a lot of old people who are very fit, they either did strictly lifting, strictly running, and now I think that we're going to see people reach ages even older and staying in really good shape because they did a good mix of both.
Yeah, I agree. And listen. I wanna kind of go back to what I said. Like, I think that running is overrated because it's kind of seen as like this blanket, just like it just fixes your weight loss thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think that if you get good enough at it and you're able to stay healthy while doing it, then it's a great thing, like Jerry just explained. But I just find that most people aren't able to fully maximize it. And in that case, is there anything you want to add to it or no?
I was going to say that brought up another point that I forgot to add is because there's a skill component. I believe that it is one of those things too that just it helps you become more like you think about people when they first started running program, they're very heavy with their step. They're not
Yeah.
very springy. Sprints and long runs paired together can help you become more springy, light on your feet, and that's another benefit that I see.
Yeah, I think like obviously, like I was saying, because I was gonna kind of transition into one of my last underrateds, like that makes a lot of sense on what you're saying, but like to me, for like the general population, until they're good enough with like hip extension and kind of obviously like you can get better at running by doing it, but starting off in smaller distances,
Yes.
right, and then building up until they get to that point, assault bike, right? The assault bike, in my eyes, is still underrated severely because it's one of those, like, if I was on an island, what piece of equipment would I bring? And I would bring the assault bike, because you can get that high CNS stimulus from it. Because the arms and legs move, you can get that strength stimulus from it a little bit. Obviously, not like, we're not talking like hypertrophy or anything
It's
like that.
minimal, but it's
Yeah.
there.
And then you can do aerobic capacity on it. You can go long distances on the assault bike. You can do short, fast sprints on it. Like, it's one of those things that I still believe is truly underrated, because I think it was a subset of like CrossFit, really,
Hmm.
and kind of like it was just seen as like a tool for CrossFit. And I see it more and more at gyms. Like, as I've traveled, bro, it was like fucking impossible to find an assault bike if I wasn't at a CrossFit gym, you know?
Hmm.
And that was like the only place you could find an assault bike. And, as we started going, there's more and more gyms, like regular gyms, that have like assault bike, rower skier type deal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that the assault bike is just so severely underrated for everything that it provides. And it's almost like a one stop shop that, like, yeah, maybe you might not be the best at running and maybe it just doesn't feel good, but we can still get that same stimulus, if not better, from a bike.
I would agree. I would agree. I think the bike is underrated for that reason too. Not a lot of
Yeah.
people like the assault bike because it's hard,
Yeah.
but so many benefits from it.
Yeah, exactly. Any more
Do you
for
have any
you?
more underrated?
I have two more.
Two more? That is
Yeah.
all my underrateds.
All right, so I'll say these kind of, well, I'll go through them quick, but seated hamstring curl is an underrated. I think that a lot of people don't isolate the hamstrings properly.
I
And I
almost
think
wrote
that,
that down.
yeah, if you
Yeah.
don't do this exercise, I think you're missing out on so much athletic potential and growth of the legs. Like, the hamstrings are such a big driver in everything that we do, especially with running, especially with sprinting, anything that we're going through, like that gait cycle. Hamstrings are so important, and I think having strong hamstrings, it's very easy to kind of like find multiple ways to train your quads, right? Anytime we walk, anytime we go upstairs, anytime that type of thing, like the quads are very dominant, and the hamstrings are very hard to find other ways to train them. So the seated hamstring curl, while done in the right capacity, is a game changer. And if you do this properly, it's gonna help you improve literally every single lift that I can think of in your life. It's going to help with all aspects of gait cycle. It's going to help with all aspects of squatting, lunging, running, sprinting. So the seated hamstring curl is isolating those muscles specifically. I think that one and like the prone hamstring curl are both severely underrated in regards to like things that are used. And then the last one for me is the landmine. So
Hmm.
I see a lot of people especially in the fight sports, because this is where I kind of have this back and forth. I see a lot of people in the fight sports, S&C world, that are like, landmines are overrated because they're used for speed, right? I want to take it back to a conversation quickly that I had about Olympic lifting at like the beginning of this episode. If we look at Olympic lifting for what it is, right? It's lifting a lot of weight fast, right? But one thing that people don't understand about Olympic weightlifting at the highest level, it's not about moving the weight, it's about moving our body around the weight. If you see the best Olympic weightlifters, that bar barely moves once it gets out of the air, right? It obviously gets lifted into an area, but once you see that hit shrug, they're dropping underneath the bar. And that's why that drop is so important, and so like people teach that drop in the Olympic weightlifts and the snatch and the jerk, because if you're trying to move the weight, yeah, you're not gonna be very fast because you're lifting absurd loads, right? You move that weight fast, quote unquote, by dropping underneath it, and you move fast. Now, why I'm talking about this is because I think one of the most underrated things about the landmine is that when you get heavy, you get that same stimulus or that same idea of having to move your body around a load, right? And I think especially in the fight world, it's like, power is great and having just raw power is amazing. But I also think if we really look at sports as a whole, creating force through proper footwork, creating force through angles, creating force through moving our body around space and becoming very efficient at that process is so important. And it's one of the very few ways we can actually train this outside of just like, you know, crawling patterns and things like that, where we're kind of moving our body freely through space. Like the landmine and Olympic lifting and things like that, they're very high skill, especially Olympic lifting. But the landmine is one of the more dumbed down ways I've found to teach someone not to just pull a weight, pull, and then press out of this position, right? If we're doing that properly, we're pulling this position, hit shrug, and then we're dropping underneath and catching, right? If you watch the way to teach the landmine positions as you go through, that bar is staying kind of in this position through, and it's not moving like these big long distances that we normally see with people. But again, this is part of the problem is people just go, oh, I'm going to do the landmine, and they go,
Yeah.
and then they catch it and they go through like these huge ranges of motion, and they're not actually utilizing the pattern as they need to. So I think with the landmine, if you do it properly where you get a load that's heavy enough that you need to use those legs and that hip shrug, and then you're dropping underneath and you're utilizing that speed and those turns and the compression and expansion of the spine, it's so underrated. And I think that like people who talk about it from just a speed perspective are missing out on like such detail of that aspect of it that like they absolutely need to rethink how they're talking about it and why they're talking about it, right? Because speed, yeah, maybe it's not the best, but I think with everything else that I just talked about it that it works on, it leads to better skill, better speed, better power overall, without question.
I would agree that it is underrated as well for a strength output because I've used the landmine as like pressing as a stepping stone for people getting to dumbbells and kettlebells because they lack the overhead stability, and that anchored position of the landmine helps a lot. Introducing that overhead position, throwing in some little tempo work there too, especially when extended and on the way down, you'll see a lot more strength and stability here, and it allows people to also like if they can't unlock that straight overhead position, starting by going here and then letting them lean into it to unlock it, obviously if it doesn't cause pain, is a really good stepping stone to getting them the strength that they need with a dumbbell and a kettlebell.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I only have 2 for perfectly rated. I probably could have added a couple more to this, but honestly, I think they're just basic, and I think that like to me, like the bench press, I think is perfectly rated. I think people know how fucking awesome it is, and I think that oftentimes I think it falls. If anything, I think it would fall into the underrated category. But I think that bench press is like everybody does it. They do it enough, and I think you get the benefits of it. And the other one that's perfectly rated to me is just a cable lat pull down. I think that like a lot of people see the benefits of it because they either can't do pull ups. And again, I kind of think these are more like leaning towards underrated, but I think that they're perfectly rated movements. Again, I just think they're in every program. I think for the most part, everybody can do them and does them. And does them pretty well, and there's no like major flaws I see outside of like sometimes, with the bench press you go too heavy and there's like bouncing and little details like that. But I think for the most part, they're easy, teachable movements that a lot of people do right and take full advantage of.
I like it. I would agree too. And the bench press is one of those ones where it's the big 3, and I think it earns being in the big 3 because one, it's fun. If you're doing it right and you can do it safely, you're going to see a lot of growth in strength, and you could also use it for hypertrophy. It's just a great movement. And then obviously lat pull downs. That's one of those things where sometimes if you're struggling with a pull up, it actually can help get you to a pull up. A lot of people say that it doesn't because it needs to be specific to a pull up, but a lot of lat growth and development can happen from that pull down. So
can indeed.
Yeah. I have a few that I could blow through kind of quickly because we've discussed them a little bit. First one being leg press. I think it's perfectly rated.
Okay.
Because it gets a lot of hate from the hardcore like barbellers. Like they're like, why would you do a leg press? It's showing off. And it's like, yeah, you don't have to do it as your main thing all the time. It can be very good for the legs. And again, no axial load. Like you're not gonna feel axial fatigue. That fatigue in your core and on your back and all that stuff from the barbell. Throw that out the window and just tax the legs. Perfectly rated for that reason. And then the other one I want to go through very quickly is pull-ups.
Okay.
Because everybody wants to do them. It's a movement that has a shit ton of respect. If you see someone doing a pull-up, you're like, okay, they're dedicated to the gym. Nobody just goes up and is like, oops, and starts banging out pull-ups. So that's one where I think everybody knows that it's a top dog exercise. And when you get it and you can do it correctly, because that's another thing, if you see people just half repping it, everyone's like, what a fucking joker. Like, what's this guy doing? Full rep pull-ups, absolutely perfectly rated, as they should be. Did you want to add anything to those two before I move on?
No, I think you're spot
on. Bulgarian or rear foot elevated split squats. I think they're perfectly rated because you get a lot of leg stability. You also tax the glutes a lot. You can work on tempo work. You can do them assisted.
I fucking hate doing those, bro.
They are, and everybody knows that they suck. But when you do them, you see a lot of growth from it.
Exactly.
That I personally love that movement. When I'm doing them, I kind of want to shoot myself in the face some days, but for the most part, I love the pain that I feel doing them because I know that they're that much, or you get that much benefit from it. The reason that I didn't say that they are underrated, and
I feel like it's a basic bitch workout.
yeah, that's exactly why. It's like, yeah, everybody does this shit, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's not fancy anymore because it's become the hip lift for the quads.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is to me. The hand on the hip, very light dumbbell, just slow work and
Yeah.
a BBL, and then you're on Instagram making millions. The other one, the other ones, walking lunges, I believe are so beneficial for most people. It's You think about how you get to a walking lunge. A lot of people will get knee pain in a split squat. They'll get knee pain and some step ups sometimes, reverse lunges. But there are a lot of things that you can do before getting to a walking lunge because that's typically what causes a lot of the issues in the knee when you're not ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those movements too that when you're doing it nice, slow, and controlled on the way down, you get a lot of that eccentric control. You're going to feel it not only in the quads and in the glutes, but you could also hinge over a little bit more, hit the hamstrings and glutes a little bit more. So you could change your positioning to fit the goal for the day. So I think they're perfectly rated because you can obviously get good work from it, but you'll also be able to tweak it just a little bit in order to change the movement, not entirely.
Well, I think walking lunges are like they're an exaggerated gait cycle. So it's like you're
Yes,
loading
exactly.
the way you walk and you run, and I think it's one of those movements that like you're going through the same range of motion as you would if you were walking and running in a more exaggerated stance or style,
Yes.
and that's why I think they're I would even
And
say
it
they're underrated.
translates really well to athletic movements,
Yeah,
which is why I think
exactly.
it's perfectly rated. It's good for everyday people, and it's good for
Yep.
athletes, and it's a king exercise for me. I love them. The last one on my perfectly rated is 2 dumbbell overhead press. Exactly. Yes! So the reason why I think that the 2 dumbbell overhead press is perfectly rated is because a lot of people will do them in not an incorrect way, right? Not bad. A lot of people flare out the shoulders and they'll go way out here and they'll be like, oh man, that hurts. It's like, yeah, so tuck them a little bit. You can get really good stretch on the deltoids. You don't have to do like a full Arnold where you're doing the come in front, but a really good stretch at the bottom, really good squeeze at the top. And it's one of those exercises where not everyone, even myself, I had a lot of rotator cuff issues in college after I heard it. For a little bit, I couldn't press overhead with both arms. I had to do single arm work a lot and build back up to it. So I have a lot of respect for the 2 dumbbell overhead press, but also the amount of core stability necessary to perform that movement correctly, being able to draw the ribs down, resist that over exaggeration, that extension in the spine, and really squeeze in the core in order to lock at the top. Huge. I don't think it gets enough respect because it's often done incorrectly.
I agree. I think it's perfect. I think you're right, and I think the only thing is obviously like if people can maintain that position. If not, I would prefer like a seated version of that with like a
Mm-hmm.
back support, and that
Mm-hmm.
would be probably like perfectly rated because it's taking away all that core aspect or like the extension and just giving us an opportunity to just press all the way up overhead. Um, but yeah, I agree. I
I
totally
do
agree.
agree.
Yeah, I think that was it for me. I think that's everything for you, right?
Yeah, that's everything for me. I do want to
No,
share
all good.
something though, really quick,
Yeah.
just for the people who are not only just listening but watching.
What's up?
I got a new tattoo, so I'm gonna
Oh
take
yeah,
off my
that's
hoodie.
right. Shit, let's see it. Let's see it.
Very carefully, I'm gonna take off my hoodie.
Did you take the thing off?
Belly showing. What?
Did you take the? You took the
Flash.
like the wrap off?
I can't hear you because my headset's off. I don't know
Oh,
what I said,
okay.
huh? What'd you say?
I said you took the wrap off already.
No, I still have the wrap on. So I have it's
Did
not
you get it on Friday?
Sanoderm, but it's one of those derms. You can see through it. So
Did you get it
it
yesterday?
doesn't. What?
Did you get it yesterday?
Yeah, I got it yesterday.
You can take that shit off.
No, leave it on until Tuesday, dude. It helps to keep it nice and moisturized,
Oh, get it
and it
there.
heals faster.
No, it
But
doesn't.
I got myself this nice little cherry blossom. This is part 1. I'm going in 2 weeks. I'm gonna get it finished. So I'm very happy with this one. I think it came out really well. Obviously, it doesn't look that great. You got blood pooling underneath the derm patch.
Yeah,
But
that's
you
why
did
you gotta
such a
take
good
that shit
job with
off
the
and clean
black.
it.
What's up?
You gotta take that off and clean it.
No, you don't.
I do it. I've done it every single time. Everybody I talk
Brandon,
to
I'm
says
telling you,
ev-
if you leave this on
everybody
for
I talk
3
to,
days and then you clean it afterwards, it heals so much better.
everybody I talk to that has big tattoos like that says take that thing off about a couple hours after, start cleaning it, let it breathe, and it's beautiful.
No, you don't need to do that. You can. So that's another way. So that's what I did for this one. The only difference is, for me, I scabbed like a mother effer on the under forearm one.
I don't want to hear any. I
This
don't want
one
to hear
up
any.
here, this one up here healed beautifully by doing the Sanoderm for the 3 days. Like you just keep it on. So Tuesday night, I'm gonna take this off, and then after that, you start putting on the ointment a couple times a day. You clean it, all that stuff, and it makes it way easier. Like when you're in the shower, you don't have to worry
Never
about
had
like
a problem. I'm just saying.
burn
Never
feelings.
had a problem.
I've never had a problem either. This one too felt great. Healed
I love
perfect.
it. We love it. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
One of our longest too.
Yeah, underrated, overrated, perfectly rated in regards to exercise selection. If you guys have any of your own movements you think we missed, definitely, definitely drop a comment below. We'll talk about it in a future video. Or if you have some pushback on anything that
Yeah,
we said today, we'd
please.
love to have a conversation. But until then, we will see you guys next time. Peace.
Deuces.